we used to say in SAA, and because the guys always used to say it in America, and you'd land on this, you can barely see, and there's snow everywhere into New York, and the guy goes, "Good job, Springbok." And, you would sit there and it would make you really proud,
Rob, it's so lovely to meet you here on Zoom.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and tell me, where are you based at the moment?
I'm currently in Big Bay, Cape Town, in Blouberg Strand side of Cape Town.
Wow. Yeah. Blouberg Strand, this is a nice place to be.
Yeah, I mean, I do love it. I suppose it's a bit of a, I chose it for my lifestyle. So in most ways, so yeah, it's really nice, and yeah, it's beautiful. So
do you fish?
I do all that. So anything to do with the sea, I've pretty much grown up living.
Really?
Yeah, since I was a kid. So fish, spearfish, kiteboard, surf. If it's in the ocean, I do it. So, I try to do it as much as I can. These days, it's quite hard. So,
well, in the ocean or in the air, it seems your two passions.
Yeah. So, one of them is one of my passions is kind of dormant at the moment, but I think it'll change in the near future. So, I'm hoping so. I'm pushing in that regard. So.
Well, tell me, were you sort of grounded because of COVID?
So I was on what was known as the freighter fleet at South African Airways, our local carrier, and in 2010, my last flight was the 10th of Feb in 2020, and it's actually ironic, though, that we didn't renew our leases in March for our 3 freighters that we had at SAA Cargo, which was just the cargo side of SAA. We didn't renew those leases, and then when COVID happened, it was kind of like the nail in the coffin for SAA and what was going on. So ironically, why I say that is the only guys that were actually flying during the whole of COVID were only freighter guys up and down from Joburg. So if we had had those freighters, we would have been the only guys operating between Johannesburg and Cape Town and Durban and stuff. So we would have actually been working. But because we didn't renew our leases, because someone didn't do the homework there, we lost the lease, and they went off back to the guys in Europe. So yeah, that was the story of that.
Yeah. And then for you, then it was just basically you had to sit and wait it out.
Yeah, so basically what happened was, South African Airways didn't pay us. I think I can't remember the exact number, at least 12 months while they were finalizing everything. So I went and started. So a bit of background is I used to do construction in Hawaii when I was much younger. So I met up with one of my friends that was doing construction at the time, and he had a business, and I joined up with him, and basically we were running a construction company / maintenance company during COVID, in order to just survive, just to make ends meet. So I did that, and then a few things. I mean, obviously there were some positive sides to COVID for me. During that time, I applied for my British passport through a Sable International, which is like they do passports, visas, moving to other countries, etc., etc. So I did that, and basically I got my British passport. So from then on, once we got paid out, the very next month, I said to my partner, who was wanting to go to the super yachts, I said, let's just slow the business down. And basically I've just, ever since then, since November last year, I've just been concentrating on doing my European license. I'm doing the UK EASA and the European EASA. Because of Brexit, they've basically separated the two, which makes you write double the amount of exams, double the amount of the cost. So yeah, so I'm almost there. So I've got the 22 out of the 26 exams I've done 2 trips across to Europe to write exams, and yeah, it's almost done. 4 more to go, and then in September, and then I'll have my British and my European license, and with a British passport. So hopefully, then I can start finding some work in the UK.
That's amazing that you did that, and this is not cheap. I mean, your whole training and everything related is very expensive. And did you have to now fund it yourself?
Yeah. So basically, what I did is when SAA went under, I basically just took my pension and provident fund, and a lot of guys didn't. They just had enough cash. I didn't. So I just took my pension and provident fund and paid the tax on it to the government, almost R1 million, to get my pension and provident fund out, and just shoved it into my bond at my home for my house. And then I've just been chipping away at that slowly and eating into that every month for the last 10 months. So, but yeah, it's fun. It's a means to an end. I'm upskilling myself, so I see it as a benefit. I'm just believing. Yeah, I'm trying to go a different way. Some people have gone to fly Safaris and the Airlinks, and they've had that opportunity, which is fantastic. But for me, I need to start looking at broadening my horizon overseas. So.
But now, how did you start in aviation? Was it something that you felt passionate about since a young age?
Yeah, I mean, I was never. I always. I mean, it's so ironic, but Top Gun was obviously probably 80% of pilots out there kind of kicked them into gear, and I'm sure there more people wanting to become pilots after watching the new Top Gun. But yeah, I did it, but obviously I matriculated in 1998, and it was just after the change. In 1994, obviously apartheid ended, and a transformation in South Africa. So when I applied for the Air Force and stuff, I wasn't the right demographic. So I decided at the time I was doing quite well in surfing. So I went to Hawaii to try and be a pro surfer. And I lived there for about 4 to 5 years. And in that time, I did the world tour and tried to become a professional surfer. And in that time, I realized, well, you have to weigh up whether you're going to make it. So during that time, I did all right, but I wasn't good enough to make the elite tour. So during that time, I decided, okay, it's time to start thinking about something that I really want to do, which was becoming a pilot. And I'd met a few people overseas and stuff like that. And the guys just said, there's a school in South Africa, you can go there, pay for it yourself. So basically the last 2.5 years, I worked in construction in Hawaii under the table, which isn't ideal, but I had to make ends meet, and it was my dream, and my boss was really happy with me. So basically I saved up a whole bunch of money and came back and funded my own pilot's license in Port Alfred. So that's where I learned to do the construction side of it in those 2.5 years. And from there, I started at 43 Air School as a doing my private pilot's license, and then on to doing my commercial pilot's license. From there, I went to I became a flight instructor at 43, and then from there, I moved to West Africa, flying for a company called Salenta, flying ATR 42s in West Africa, which wasn't the greatest. It's a very lonely time living in those places. And then I came back to an airline called South African Express in Cape Town, which I had great fun at. It was a great airline. Obviously government owned again, so not well managed. And then from there, I joined South African Airways in 2010, November, flying as a P3, which was really fun. And then I went on in 2012 to fly the freighters, which were the much older airplanes, which they didn't have the glam, but we didn't fly as much, but we flew really old airplanes in the middle of the night, really tired most of the time. But it was we were only about 40 of us on that freighter, and we had a great time. We used to have bunk beds and sleep in airplanes and sleep on the tarmac, but it was really good fun. We used to cook food in the engines because sometimes we didn't have a cooker to cook our food. We would just come outside with and put fire gloves on and put our food in the engines after we shut down and cook our food with the engines. Yeah, I mean, it was a great time, I must say.
So that you call it aviation braai.
Yeah, that's an aviation. And it was always a funny thing because we'd see a co-pilot walk out with fire gloves with 2 meals and putting it on the back of the engine mounts, and 10 minutes later, voila, there you go, food's hot. You guys are crazy, man. So it was really interesting. I really had a good time. We did a couple of tours for SAF Air during that time, flying into Mogadishu, Somalia with a 737 and stuff. That was also quite fun. Really, really challenging flying. Pretty dangerous. I don't think most airlines would let you do that today.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was just the procedures were you would get fired now.
Okay.
But it was all a part of just trying to get out of there. It was, it's a pretty dangerous place. So yeah, it was good fun. But yeah, and so far it's been a great ride in my aviation career. Obviously, the little hiccup in the last 2 or 3 years has been a great challenge. I think it's been a challenge for a lot of pilots because it's so out of their control, which is what they're so used to, and they have no way of changing it in any way until the economy picks up. So.
And this is what I also realize when I speak to pilots is you're it's not just a job. It's almost like if you're in aviation, it's you're very passionate about what you're doing. It's almost like it's part of your life. And
yes.
For that being halted, and sort of, okay, you had the construction to fall back on, but still, it must be so frustrating to think you would rather be flying than going back into construction.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's two things. The passion is always a great thing for aviation. In some ways, I actually think it's sometimes not so good in the aviation sector because some people start flying for cheaper and cheaper rates just because they really want to go flying instead of you're a professional and everyone should stand together. So I think that in the world right now, I think the US is doing a big correction because they went that way, and now the US is starting to change, where they're now starting to realize it's a business. Everyone needs to the standard rate, everyone gets paid that. But yeah, I mean, it is a passion when it comes down to it. No one chooses a career in aviation because they don't want to do it. There's always something. I always said to someone when I was turning over the N2 out of Cape Town, I could see that all the roads are blocked. I just go, thank goodness I'm in this airplane and I'm looking at this view. It's so beautiful. But yeah, construction was very. It was a challenging environment for me because obviously I was dealing with a different labor force. They didn't know sometimes what they were doing. There was no one, in the aviation sector, everyone's got their jobs and everyone knows what to do. And you do this and I do this and everything falls into place. We come together as a unit. So trying to, what's called standard operating procedures in the aviation, trying to teach my guys standard operating procedures with painting a wall was like, we do this, and then next day you come back, it's totally different. So that's all I said.
Yeah, somebody, it was Joanne Jordan, told me about this. How when an aircraft comes in, everybody just knows what to do, and it's like, with one move, they just everything comes together. The baggage handlers and everything works like that. And this is I can just completely understand when you're in construction, it doesn't work like that.
No, it's it becomes quite frustrating because no one reads labels, even though it's all there, unfortunately. So you do this first, then you do this first, and aviation's not like that. Everyone, like Joanne said, airplane comes in, but the big thing is everyone's done it so many times that they get very good at it. It's like a F1 pit crew. The only job is to take the tires off and put the fuel in, and they do that like a lot of times. So I suppose in construction and stuff, they're not always doing the same thing. So they're not, in some parts they're not very good.
Mm.
But yeah,
Yeah. But now, how do you see the industry in South Africa? Because this is also what I heard, that it's many big airlines have now closed their doors or have been grounded. And what are the possibilities for a South African pilot?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think South African aviation I think they're going to probably take the biggest knock out of the world, I would think, especially with what's going on with our economy. We're having load shedding up to 6 hours a day. I've got a couple of friends in businesses, major businesses taking a knock, and with that, the people that used to fly, the guy that owns a pizzeria down the street, that now used to fly to Joburg to go see his family, he's not going to have the money anymore because his customers aren't coming in because people aren't making money. I think a very big squeeze is coming to South Africa, and so we get, those things established to, what it was before. The fundamentals of a country: you need water, you need fuel, and you need electricity. If those things aren't happening, your economy is shut down. And I've been staying with friends that are coming, that are moving over to the UK and different places, and they're just like, it just can't sustain itself. It's the same as SAA. It's almost like you could see it slowly, just, the things couldn't sustain itself. Yeah, very fancy, but, from the desks not getting cleaned, from, certain areas now not being vacuumed, all that just started degrading really slowly. And that's what I'm seeing now. Some of the airlines are, jumping in because obviously there is space to grow, but I think that's also going to, contract at one stage because, the guys that are flying, those people are moving overseas. So it's very frustrating and tough, So aviation sector, I think, is going to take a very big knock in South Africa. And I do see a lot of the pilots, once a lot of them have moved across to like the fly safers and stuff, I don't see them staying around there. I think they're just using that as a skipping stone to get onto the next, maybe overseas, or going to Asia or the Middle East and stuff like that. So,
which is really sad, because I saw some documentaries about the aviation industry in South Africa, and they were actually very much on the forefront of things at some time, and it would be very sad if that happens.
Yeah, I think aviation in Southern Africa, we've got a very high standard. I can remember flying into London, and it's a really funny story. But as a P3 on an Airbus A340 going into London, where the visibility is way below minimum from most carriers, and you've got the Deltas and the Uniteds coming in, and the air traffic controller and this Yank accent is going, United, what do you need to land on this runway? And the guy's like, oh, we need like 600. And the guy's like, nope, it's 300. You're gone. And off they go, and they got to go find another airport to land. And all of a sudden, South African Airways pops into the picture, and the guy goes, what do you need? And the guy goes, oh, we need 250. He's like, you're good to go down the slope. And then, we bounce, and then we're the only guys landing, and everyone else is like, how is that possible? We land, and there's a famous saying that, we used to say in SAA, and because the guys always used to say it in America, and you'd land on this, you can barely see, and there's snow everywhere into New York, and the guy goes, good job, Springbok. And, you would sit there, and it would make you really proud, that we could land in this, and everyone else is going around, and none of these guys. So, I think we definitely were, and I think we still are. Like Kalula Comair, that was a really good company. I never thought that would go down. But there are high standards in aviation in South Africa. And I don't think it'll change much. I just think it's going to contract a bit. So, yeah.
But Joanne also talked about the shortages of pilots that that they foresee. But do you think for a young guy or girl coming up now wanting to become a pilot, is it even worth, because it's so much money to invest? If they're in South Africa.
Yeah, I think you would have to weigh up and do an Excel spreadsheet and then do if you know what you have to do to become a pilot, and it's so, you almost, I don't know how to explain it. If you just lose your medical, you're done, and you've got nothing else behind you. You lose an eye. Whereas if you're in IT or something, and take for instance IT during COVID, those guys all worked.
Yeah.
You go flying and you don't see your family, especially on the long haul. You leave your home and you leave for 4 days. You don't get to take your kids to school. It's really fun for you, but it's not really fun for sometimes your family. So it's tough. You'd have to weigh up. I think the shortage is coming because people are starting to realize pilots weren't forced ever to go try and do something else. They were always in that, okay, I'm a pilot. Then when COVID happened, they're like, well, I've got to make a plan. I've got to get some sort of qualification, because when does this happen again?
Yeah.
So guys have realized, okay, I can't just rely on being a pilot. So some guys have gone and done that, and then they realize, no, I don't think I'm going to come back. And I've got multiple friends. I've got a friend in Joburg that started posting it. He's doing really well. He's opened his 4th one, and he's like, I'm never going back to becoming a pilot, just because I see my family and there's interaction, and I'm not away for days. So the financial side, but it is also, you got to look at the personal side and your personal life. And so I do think aviation is going to take a big knock because people aren't going to come back. And especially aviation in South Africa, it takes you so long to become a captain. We sit here for such long periods. I've been a first officer for 10 years at a legacy airline, but you go to Europe and you pass your commercial pilot's license, you can sit in the right seat of a Airbus A320 within months. And then 2 or 3 years later, when you've got enough hours, at the ages of 24, 25, you're a captain of these airplanes. The same airplanes where I'm sitting for 10 years as a first officer. So I think, and then you get what's called, you get to a certain age where if you haven't become a captain by a certain age, the companies start looking at you a little bit like, what's wrong with you? Like, oh, is there something wrong with you? Can't you become a captain? And you're like, no, I've been sitting at a legacy carrier for the last 15, 20 years, and then they went bust. So I've only been a co-pilot. So, the Joanne and all these people should really be captains. If they were anywhere else in the world, they would be captains. So, yeah, I think it's a bit tough, especially the sector here, because you've got to pay so much money, and then you've still got to wait such a long time for one. So, I think the guys are starting to realize, and they've got such a fright that they realize they've got to go make money because they've got to recoup the costs of 2 years and stuff like that. So I do see it, yeah.
Yeah, and it must be disheartening as if, like, say, for instance, like you're mentioning now, Joanne, if you are so passionate, and if it's like aviation, when you're in aviation, it's basically your life, because you cannot do anything else. You're so committed to this industry and to this job. But then there must be this reward, like, okay, well, I'm going somewhere. But if it, like you say, if it drags and drags and drags, and she also explains that it's always starting over, starting again if you go to another airline. So yeah, this must be not very good for the self, for the motivation.
No, it's not. I think motivation is key, the key word there. And I think for most pilots, with COVID's motivation, it's really taken the wind out of their sails. And it's trying to get back on track. You've always had a plan, even flying the airplane. I'm going to go here and I'm going to do this. And if this doesn't work, I'm going to go here. There's always like a structure to it. And we're very structured, I think everybody in aviation is more of a structured scenario. So when you have okay, well, I can't do this and I can't do that. So now what do I do? It's almost like, wow, okay. I suppose it's almost like an entrepreneur. I think they go through a little bit more of that, where all of a sudden something just collapses and you go, oh my goodness, what do I do now? So yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, but now that you're saying, you really, I didn't think of it that way, but that's true, because you work on a flight plan, so you know exactly, and you know a month ahead or so, where you're flying to. So for you, everything is always there. So okay, so I'll be flying, and this is the route, and this is what I'll be doing. So of course, yeah. So if you've done that for many, many years, then when something like this happens, where you think, okay, what now? Where's the flight plan now?
Yeah, and that is a very tough. I think that's been the biggest. What was the word we used to use? Well, it's adaptability, and what was that word? I'm trying to remember. We used to use it at SAA. There was a resilience. It takes resilience to go through this. And I mean, I take my hats off to the guys. There's guys that have done amazing things and they've just reinvented themselves. It's amazing, and there are people that have helped. I've had people help me. I just, you cannot believe there's some people that are just so helpful. Colleagues, you're just like, wow, I never thought that would happen. And then there's also been, there's always the two sides to the coin. You've been like, wow, I didn't think that guy would do that, stuff like that. So yeah, it's been an eye opener, and it's definitely taught me a lot. And yeah, I think when you go back to the aviation, I must say, when I go back to aviation, I do think I'll be more thankful for what I had. Because it's been taken away from me. With no, you couldn't even claw back into it. Even if you tried, you could do anything. I mean, it was just nothing.
But, I think also the public takes it for granted, because we just assume, we just get on a plane. It's so easy, and it's so cheap if you compare. And we just also took it for granted. And I've actually spoken to many artists and musicians who flew all over Europe to do their concerts. It was just for them the natural thing to do, and they were also suddenly stuck. And then you realize, okay, wait a minute, we just took flying for granted.
Yeah, exactly. I think flying has become the biggest thing, where you just go, wow, okay, I think people's freedoms to just move around has become, I really appreciate that now. So yeah, I think it's a big thing when it comes to that. I think at least artists and all these people, they could do a bit of work on the side, whereas in the aviation sector, the guys just didn't have any work. You can't just get a pilot back up to speed and just fly one day here and it's okay and everything's good. There's months and months of training. You can't just jump back in and go, right, okay, it's like riding a bicycle. And that's what they're seeing. There's a big increase in accidents because guys haven't flown in 2 years. It's like getting in your car after 2 years and expecting to drive it at a Formula One pace.
Yeah.
Formula One car pace, because that's what in essence you're doing. You're flying in an environment that's ever changing and you've got to be up to the job. Now you haven't flown in 2 years. You've got the guys are getting less pay, and the guys are also not really, their mind isn't on the job. They're like, how am I going to pay my bond, and how am I going to do this? My kid's got to go to school. My other partner might not have got a job yet from COVID or lost their job. Now we've got to pay for their job. Their mind isn't all there. Some of them, some of them are fine, but some of them, that's not really what you want in a cockpit. You want someone that's well paid so that things in their life, they can make sure that those things are right, so that they've got the job in hand and they can concentrate on landing the aeroplane.
Yeah.
And they must be experienced in that they must have flown. So, yeah, it's a bit of a.
Well, you're touching on something very interesting now, because it's true, that if your mind isn't there, then because you are carrying a lot of people on this plane as well, and so the responsibility is very big, and also the responsibility of the job. So yeah, I haven't thought of that, but that's absolutely right, that what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's going to be. I think the next few years are going to be a bit tough in aviation. I think, and I think aviation as a whole is just going to have to. We're going to have to be just a little bit more, a little bit stricter, because there are going to be things popping up through the woodwork. I mean, even airplanes not flying for 2 years is not a good thing as well. Airplanes are breaking because they've sat on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but now you are going to have to leave South Africa now if you say you're going to the UK.
It's not really what I want to do. My idea would be to try and do a commuting contract in Europe, or somewhere in Europe I'm trying to get into corporate aviation, to try and do a rotational basis where I work 17-13, something like that, and then back to South Africa. That kind of just suits me a little bit better, because at the moment, I'm not ready to move there yet. I'm still, I've got a young family and stuff, and it's a bit, it's quite intricate. I'm trying to find the word intricate to try and move them over there at this kind of stage.
Absolutely, and this is also I read this article on LinkedIn just a few days ago about a call to South Africans to return to South Africa, but in the situation that things are there at the moment. I mean, if you guys are thinking, well, where do we work? If this is aviation, then the other sectors feel the same. But it's sad to think that the best pilots of South Africa have to leave now to just pursue their careers.
Yeah, I've spoken to a couple of friends, which they're not even in aviation. I mean, architects, engineers, and I met one overseas when I was there writing my exams, and they're in the same boat. A lot of guys, big corporates, are letting it go over the engineers, architects, guys haven't worked. So I think every sector is going through that. Obviously, aviation might be a little bit more affected just because of I see with the airlines closing, that contraction coming. Guys are leaving, more so in aviation, but I think it is happening, which is sad because no one wants to leave South Africa. My parents are actually from Zimbabwe originally, and they did the exact same thing. When Robert Mugabe got into power, they left Zimbabwe, which was a great country, to come to South Africa. So now it's almost like it's gone full circle. My grandfather came from England, did something in Zimbabwe. We were around. My dad was in the war there, then came to South Africa, and now we're almost going back.
Yeah.
And it's really sad. I don't really want to go back. I love the country, but we're in such a situation now that you have to kind of you can't wait until the fuel on the airplane runs out. You've got to make a plan before then,
Yeah.
And that's where, I think that's where everyone's at the moment, and the aviation sector there too.
But now, Rob, let's do it in this way. Make your wish, and then and tell me, what would you like for the future? So, because I must say that many people who made wishes on my channel, their wishes came true. So, go for it.
I mean, my ideal world would be have a corporate job, commuting, and coming back to South Africa, because I love South Africa. I still want to be here. So that would be my ideal wish. work in Europe, live in Africa, enjoy the sun and the waves.
Oh, yeah. And all your activities in the sea.
Yes, yeah. So I think it's one of the only things that keeps me sane is forget about everything there. No one, everybody's the same. Everyone's just enjoying the waves, having a good time. It's a very enjoyable. It's like going fishing. I just sit out there by myself and everything goes away.
Okay, so we'll put your fishing times also on the wish list so that you've got more fishing time.
Yeah.
Time on the beach.
Yeah, I need a charter boat and do tuna charters out of Cape Town. That would be quite a good gig for me also. So
well, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
I lived in the UK for 14 years, so I know you. I can tell you now, you will miss your beach very, very much. Your Bloubergstrand.
Yeah, I actually did a surfing competition in Newquay, Cornwall. It was a Rip Curl
Really?
Pro. Yeah, I did a competition there, and I enjoyed the English coastline there. And actually, they're popping up so many wave pools in and around Europe that now you don't even need to go to the beach; just go to a wave pool. And there's one in Bristol now and stuff. So all these man-made waves are popping up everywhere. They're going to put about 7 in the UK now, so that's going to be quite fun. So yeah,
Okay, so you'll have the best of both worlds then.
Yeah, I think on my days off I can always just pop in, do a bit of exercise,
Well, you mentioning you have a young family. Do you have a son or daughter who's also interested in aviation?
No, my kids are still too young. They love Top Gun, but they're 4 and 9.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so everything's Maverick and Top Gun and Tom Cruise and stuff. Obviously, I got them kind of set up before this because, Top Gun didn't get released for 2 years. So every once in a while, I'd put on Top Gun, the trailer, and I would look at this. We had to watch Top Gun 1. And so, yeah, it was quite fun to watch. And now all of a sudden, I took my oldest to go watch it. She wasn't supposed to go watch it, but I took her to the movies because she's a little bit underage. I think it's 12 or whatever. I just said you're 12 today. Today you are 12. Okay. Top Gun, and yeah, she loved it. Yeah. So, yeah. But I don't know. I don't know if that bug is bitten yet. No.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm trying to get it there, but I tell her, look at this is the first female fighter pilot for the Blue Angels, which just came out the other day. And this is the first, okay, yeah, see, girls can fly. Okay.
Yeah.
But they don't really make it to pay too much attention yet.
Well, yeah, I think, but maybe she will, maybe if she sees your love for it, then you never know. But even if she just loves flying with you, then it's also a nice thing.
Yes, I actually haven't taken my partner or my kids flying yet. So it would be,
really?
I've actually never taken anyone in my family flying yet. Just never had the opportunity. I flew freighters, so come with me.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's one of the things I'd like to do. Probably on the bucket list. Take my kids. I'm sure they'd love it. Probably have to do it sooner rather than later on the bucket list.
Yeah. Well, Rob, I will always remember your aviation braai. I think this is amazing. I would actually love to have experienced that.
Yeah, that was it was always the guys always had they always laughed at us when we told them the stories. It's always that and the horses. We had great fun. I can tell you a couple of stories about taking racehorses from Cape Town to Mauritius. That was we had a situation. Actually, I'll tell you the story quickly. Of they hadn't let the tranquilizer go through the horse. It was still they just administered it, and they were all racehorses. We actually used to take them to Mauritius for quarantine because they got African horsefly sickness. So we'd fly them there, and then they'd quarantine before they went off to Dubai to go do races and all over the world. Anyway, the one day this horse jumps the cart and off it goes. Now we've got no gates. We're just straight towards the runway. And this horse bolts about 50 meters and stops right on the other side of the security line, where it goes from, SAA to Cape Town International. And there's a guard there. And it was so funny. And the one of the trainers runs across to go grab the horse. And the guy stops. The security guard stops him and goes, "Sorry, you're not allowed across this line." And he goes, "But the horse is going to run across the road." And he goes, "No, you must go around and go through security." Needless to say, the first airplane that took off, this horse did its 3,000 meters and bolted across the whole airport.
Oh.
So I closed the airport. British Airways went around after flying 10 hours from London. And then eventually it did its 3,000. Got to the other side of the fence and just stood there, and we went and grabbed it because they're only good for those 3,000 meters, and then they really tired. And put it back in the box, and off we went to Mauritius.
So the whole airport had to come to a standstill.
Yeah, because there was this horse running around on the airport field across the runway and all this kind of stuff. It was a lot of people got into trouble for that,
Yeah. Well, that I shouldn't say that, but that security guard really.
Yeah, it was those things we like. There's a horse right here. It stopped. We could have. This wouldn't happen, but now you don't have a security badge, you must go around.
Oh goodness. Well, Rob, I wish you all the best for all your new adventures, and that you can have the ideal job and the ideal career, so that you can be halfway in UK and halfway in South Africa.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
When I come to Bloubergstrand someday, I will come and look you up, see if you are. Yeah.
I will
see if you are fishing.
We'll have to go down to Onsahasi and have a mussel pot, and you can have a.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing. Okay.
Thanks very much.
I'll put that one on my bucket list then.
That most definitely, you won't be disappointed.
Okay. Okay, Rob. Have a lovely day, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Bridget. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Bye. Bye.